25,000 additional soldiers may be deployed to assist in the battle to restore calm to Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. This is the recommendation of Defence Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. She was briefing Parliament's Joint Committee on Defence on the security situation just a little earlier this evening. The NCA reporter Lindsay Dendlinger has been following that story and has all the details. Hi there again, Lindsay. So what exactly did the Defence Minister say about these 25,000 troops, how soon they might be deployed and how it's going to unfold?
Sally, a bit unclear at this hour exactly how it's going to unfold. She did tell the committee that after a meeting with the President last night, in which the President is reportedly said that he was very unhappy with the situation and felt that the troops had to be increased to 10,000 in number. Then he met with opposition parties today. They felt that that number should be as much as 75,000, which is the same number of troops we saw on the ground during the start of the hard lockdown. And the ministers telling the committee just over an hour ago that the feeling was that they needed to reach some type of middle ground. And what we know right now, the minister travelling on her way to a National Security Council meeting, which is due to take place this hour, to discuss and to work on the plan for increasing the number of soldiers we see in those hotspot provinces of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. She said the paperwork had to be prepared to work out that deployment, and so when exactly we will see all those soldiers being deployed to these hotspot areas, unclear this evening. But she did tell the committee that as the situation stands this evening, there are 1,000 soldiers in KwaZulu-Natal, 800 of them in Durban, and they form part of a contingent of 5,000 soldiers. We heard earlier this afternoon that the original number of 2,500 had been ramped up to 5,000, and from that number, Sally, we now understand as of about an hour ago that eventually we will see 25,000 soldiers being deployed to these hotspot areas.
All right, let's just listen to what the Defence Minister said.
We are submitting. We discussed with the President after that meeting, and we agreed that, okay, we don't have to say 75,000, but we should also not keep at the 10,000 which the President had proposed, that we should rather find a middle way, because you also don't want to mobilize for the sake of mobilizing, because our mobilization must also be informed by the continuous assessment of the situation, Chairperson, on the ground. So we've now submitted, we've now submitted a request for deployment of plus minus 25,000 members. So in other words, we're trying to find a middle way between the 75 and the 10,000, which was proposed by the President. So we will start, Chairperson, with the 25.
It's interesting, Lindsay. I mean, we've gone from 2,500 in the last day or so to now the minister saying we actually need 10 times that amount. The question all through this is, where was the intelligence? A sense that the reaction and the looting was massively underestimated. Did that come up this evening?
It did indeed, Sally. After she made that announcement that we have just heard in that clip you've just played, the DA, two members of that party, saying that they supported the minister, they were happy that she was increasing this number, but a fear that it might be too little too late. And she was asked why the response had not been quicker, and she had to concede, Sally, that the intelligence was lacking. She said she didn't want to use the phrase, but for a lack of a better one, they had been caught with their pants down, she said, and she said this was also true of the police. We learned this evening how much they've relied on social media to inform their intelligence. She said, according to their plan, she said they were more than 90% accurate in terms of deployment to roads that they knew would be closed, but she said she had to admit that they had no idea idea, Sally, that there would be a looting spree, and that looting spree would take place at malls in these two provinces. She said the initial idea was for the soldiers to guard national key points, the airport, fuel supplies and the like, to ensure that the stability and food security wasn't impacted, but that they had no idea that the attacks would fall on malls rather than these national key points, and saying that they had really been caught napping there, and that they actually had no idea that those were essentially the targets of those involved in this insurgence.
And of course we know that the police minister confirming that infrastructure around water and electricity and also communications was also targeted, and a number of cell phone towers have been attacked as well. It's interesting that she's going off now to a National Security Council meeting because, of course, everyone is asking, do we need a state of emergency? And she was quite clear yesterday that we're not there yet. But interesting how things are changing with this extra deployment of troops. I suppose I'm wondering what the opposition members made of that. Did she get asked questions about a state of emergency?
Sally, she did not. I think they were very distracted immediately by her announcing this increase in the number of troops. But before she joined that meeting, in his opening remarks, the chairperson of the Defence Committee, Cyril Kaba, saying that from the Parliament's point of view, they didn't feel that the number of soldiers on the ground were enough. And he expressed the view that if the number was not increased, then it could lead to the necessity for a state of emergency. But as I say, once the minister making that announcement, the opposition parties who did respond to her announcement saying that they immediately backed her and that they would wait for her to lay new paperwork before Parliament. As you know, Parliament needs to be informed of these kind of deployments, the number of troops that will be on the ground, and opposition parties saying that they were very pleased that the President is reported to have said, this relayed by the Defence Minister, that no cost is to be spared in terms of deploying these troops. Whatever it takes, the President is believed to have told the Minister, then that is what needs to be done to get them deployed as quickly as possible. This afternoon we heard the Acting Minister in the Presidency saying that it wasn't just something that could happen with a click of a finger. It takes time to deploy troops. They are stationed all over the place. They need to be called from their various bases where they are stationed, and so we couldn't expect this all to happen overnight. But the issue now of a state of emergency not coming up again in this very shortened meeting this evening, Parliament agreeing that they would reconvene in about 2 or 3 days' time when they have a better idea of how this deployment of troops is going to work and how effective they're going to be, and then they will reconvene in a few days' time to reassess the situation. So for now, the calls for a state of emergency to be declared has quietened down for the time being. They will now await to see what impact the additional troops will have.
Lindsay, very quickly, you mentioned earlier, I think it was the Freedom Front Plus who was saying we could also call for a national state of defence. Would these troops on the ground constitute that, or is that a different thing entirely?
Well, Sally, it would depend on how, under what regulations or what section of the Constitution this deployment is made. So we'll have to wait and see from the paperwork under what section the President deploys them. But yes, certainly Section 201 of the Constitution allows him to call of a state of defence, allows him to deploy these troops. He just needs to inform Parliament, give Parliament the reasons for it, how many, where they will go, those kinds of details. And that can be done, but the President he has that within his prerogative without having to call a state of emergency. He is allowed to deploy troops merely by informing Parliament of his plans and why he needs to do this.
All right, well, thank you so much for that update this evening, Lindsay Dentlinger in Cape Town. Let's move